Okay, so how does the Panama Canal actually make its money? A container ship approaches Panama carrying thousands of boxes stacked above the deck. From the bridge, the route ahead looks almost absurdly simple. Enter one ocean, rise through a set of locks, cross the middle of a country, descend into another ocean, and pay Panama for the shortcut. The geography is already there. The canal is already built. Nobody can place a second Panama beside it. So the business looks like one of the safest toll systems on Earth. Then the rain stops. The canal cuts the number of daily passages it can offer. Some ships are told to arrive carrying less cargo. Others wait outside, compete for scarce reservations, or turn toward a much longer route. Traffic falls sharply, and the canal still reports stronger profit. That is the contradiction at the center of this business. If fewer large ships can produce more money, then counting ships does not tell you what the Panama Canal is actually selling. To see it, follow the decision before the vessel ever reaches the locks. Somewhere inside a shipping company, a planner has a ship moving between the east coast of the Americas and Asia. The cargo is ready. The arrival window matters. The vessel can use Panama, go through Suez, sail around the Cape of Good Hope, or take the much longer route around South America. On one comparison published by the Panama Canal Authority, the trip through Panama took about 20 days. Suez took roughly 29 and a half. The Cape of Good Hope took around 31 and a half. Cape Horn took more than 35. Those are route-specific estimates, not universal travel times. Change the ports, vessel, weather, speed or congestion, and the numbers move, but the economic question stays the same. Every extra day at sea burns fuel. The crew remains on the vessel. The ship cannot begin its next voyage. Cargo reaches warehouses, trucks, factories, and customers later. A longer route does not just add distance. It keeps an expensive moving asset busy for more time. So the canal does not have to be cheap. It has to cost less than the delay it removes. That was the original economic promise when the waterway opened in August of 1914. The United States-led construction effort cost about $375 million, including earlier payments connected to Panama and the earlier French company. At the time, it was the most expensive construction project the United States had ever completed, but excavation was not the product. Locks were not the product. A completed canal with no useful traffic would have been a spectacular construction achievement and an economic failure. The project created a route. Shipping demand gave the route value. The canal inserts itself into trade that would move without it, then offers to remove days from the journey. That is why a ship is willing to pay. The next question is, who collects that money, and what that operator is still responsible for after the ship leaves? The Panama Canal is an inalienable asset of the Republic of Panama. It is not a private company that can be purchased, and it is not simply another government department. The Panama Canal Authority is an autonomous public entity with responsibility for operating, maintaining, conserving, and modernizing the system. That system includes the locks, channels, dams, lakes, entrances, water control structures, and the land and water directly tied to canal operations. Nearby ports may depend on the route, but they are not automatically part of the same business. A terminal can have its own operator, cranes, storage yards, and customer contracts. The Canal Authority controls the crossing. Panama's assumed control at noon on December 31, 1999. What it received was not a monument that had finished doing its job. It received a machine that had to work again the next morning. The locks had to open, the channels had to remain navigable, the dams had to hold, ships had to trust the schedule, revenue had to cover operations, maintenance, modernization, investment, and required reserves before distributable earnings could move to Panama's treasury. So when the planner sends that ship toward Panama, the vessel is not buying one generic ticket from a toll booth. There is no single canal price. A ship using the original locks does not pay what a larger Neo-Panamax vessel pays. A container ship is not priced exactly like a vehicle carrier, tanker, or gas carrier. Charges vary with the lock system, the vessel category, its size, and its capacity. Then come the services needed to move it. Canal pilots board. Tugboats may guide it. Line handlers control heavy cables. Measurements are taken. A place in the operating schedule is assigned. The invoice starts to build. There is a fixed transit component. There are capacity-based charges. There are operational services. And then there is the part that may matter most before the ship is even visible from Panama. The reservation. The authority sells advance bookings, longer-term slot products, last-minute options, date changes, and auctions when demand is high. The details vary, but the transaction underneath them is simple. A shipping company can pay not only to cross, but to know when it will cross. Picture the planner looking at a calendar. One date keeps the voyage moving. A later date means waiting near the entrance while fuel, crew time, and vessel time continue. Leaving for another route too early throws away the shortcut. Waiting too long can make the alternative even more costly. A square on that calendar can change the economics of the entire voyage. This is also why an auction payment can become enormous without representing the normal price of every transit. The ordinary toll buys the crossing. The auction buys scarce access at a particular moment. The more painful the alternatives become, the more valuable that moment can be. But pricing power has a limit. If waiting, bidding, changing dates, or carrying less cargo becomes too expensive, the longer route starts looking less unreasonable. Panama has a powerful position. It does not have a customer with no choices. And one small line in the pricing system points toward a problem much larger than the invoice. Larger vessels can face a freshwater surcharge. Part of that surcharge changes with the level of Gatun Lake. When the lake falls, the variable charge can rise. A water gauge can change tomorrow's price. The variable portion of that surcharge can range from 0 to 10% of the applicable tolls, depending on the lake level before transit. The ship has not changed, the cargo has not changed, the route has not changed. The amount of water available to operate the system has, and the price can respond before the vessel enters a lock. That is a rare kind of invoice. The scarcity is not hidden in an internal cost report. It can appear directly on what the customer pays. Keep that in mind. For most of the canal's history, the most obvious limit was the size of the locks. The shipping industry kept using larger vessels capable of carrying more cargo in one voyage, and many of the biggest new ships could not fit through Panama. So the country made a $5.25 billion bet. Panama built a third lane of larger locks, using roughly $2.75 billion in financing from international development institutions and supporting the remaining requirement through canal cash generation. The expanded canal opened in June of 2016. The commercial logic was straightforward. Larger chambers allowed larger ships. Larger ships made one available passage capable of moving much more cargo. The project approximately doubled the canal's cargo capacity and opened the route to vessel classes that previously had to go somewhere else. A single slot could now carry a much larger container ship. Liquefied petroleum gas carriers, liquefied natural gas vessels, vehicle carriers, and other large ships gained a Panama option. The schedule itself became more valuable because each date could represent far more cargo. From the outside, it looked as though Panama had solved the main problem. The old locks were too small. The country built bigger ones. The canal could keep growing. But the larger chamber only removed the limit everyone could see. The next one hides inside the way people measure success. If the canal handles more ships, it must be doing better. If it handles fewer ships, it must be doing worse. That sounds obvious until two vessels enter the statistics. One is a smaller ship using the original locks. The other is a much larger vessel using the Neo-Panamax locks. Each counts as one transit. They do not carry the same amount of cargo. They do not generate the same combination of toll and service revenue. They do not place the same value on a reservation. A transit is not a standard unit. Then there is draft, the depth of the vessel below the waterline. Add cargo and the ship sits deeper. Reduce the maximum permitted draft and the ship may still cross, but only after arriving with less cargo than planned. Now return to the planner. The reservation is confirmed. The vessel is operational. The route remains open. Then a lower draft limit appears. The ship can reduce cargo before reaching Panama. It can wait and hope conditions improve. It can compete for whatever scheduling certainty remains, or it can abandon the crossing and take a longer route. Only one of those choices disappears from the transit count. If the vessel unloads cargo and still crosses, the public number records one successful passage. It does not record the cargo that never reached the deck. The camera sees a giant ship moving through a lock. The financial system sees a weaker load. This is why vessel count can mislead. A canal can remain busy while selling less useful capacity. The locks can be full while the economic value moving through them is lower than the image suggests. The expanded locks made larger ships physically possible. They did not guarantee how deeply those ships could sit in the water, or how many of them could be lifted during a dry period. To understand that limit, look away from the hull and look at the land beneath the route. The Panama Canal is not a sea-level trench. Locks raise ships about 85 feet to Gatun Lake. The vessel crosses Panama at that higher elevation, then another set of locks lowers it back to the ocean. Water provides the lifting force. The newer lock chambers are much larger than the original ones, but water-saving basins allow them to reuse about 60% of the water involved in their operation. The original locks can also use procedures such as cross-filling, moving water from one chamber into another instead of letting all of it flow away. Those systems stretch the supply. They do not create rainfall. Gatun Lake is part of the navigation route, part of the machinery, and part of the storage system. It is also connected to freshwater used by more than half of Panama's population. That turns one lake level reading into 3 different pressures. The operator sees how many passages can be offered. The shipping planner sees whether a vessel can keep its date and carry its planned load. A household in Panama expects water to come from the same wider system, and northwest of the existing canal watershed, communities along Rio Indio see something else. The authority is studying a reservoir and transfer system there to increase dependable water storage. Depending on how the affected population is counted, roughly 2,000 to 2,500 residents could be relocated or directly affected. For the moment, the proposed reservoir is still a future decision. The reason it moved so close to the center of the canal's economics begins with the dry season that became something much worse in 2023. Rainfall over the watershed fell well below historical averages. October became the driest October in the canal watershed's recorded series going back to 1950. Gatun Lake dropped and the authority began reducing what it could safely promise. Under more normal conditions, daily transit availability had been roughly 36 vessels. By December, it had fallen to 22. 14 passages vanished from every day's booking board. For the operator, that means choosing how much service can be offered now without creating a deeper shortage later. Every lockage draws down stored water unless the watershed replenishes it. Every draft decision changes how much cargo a ship can carry. Every commercial choice sits beside the public need for freshwater. For the planner, the problem appears as a date that is no longer available or a draft limit that changes the load. The vessel can be ready, the cargo can be waiting, the locks can still move, and the route that looked permanent on the map can become conditional overnight. Some ships waited, some carried less, some paid for scarce reservation opportunities, some chose alternative routes. The authority used cross-filling in the original locks, saving the equivalent of several daily transits under its own estimates. The newer locks kept reusing water through their basins. Schedules were adjusted again and again, but eventually efficiency becomes rationing. You cannot reserve water that is not in the lake. And this is the deeper answer, hidden behind the ship count. The canal's finite inventory is dependable, freshwater-backed transit capacity, the ability to move a particular vessel, carrying a commercially useful load, on a date the customer can plan around. The geography creates the shortcut. The locks make the crossing possible. Stored water determines how much reliable service Panama can sell. Now go back to the opening contradiction. Deep draft transits in fiscal year 2024 fell to just under 10,000, roughly 21% below the previous year. Average daily passage dropped sharply. Total revenue still reached approximately 5 billion balabos, slightly above the year before. Net income rose to around 3.4 billion balbos. Fewer large ships, more profit. The reason was not that drought improved the business. It did not. The reason was that the canal was never selling identical crossings at one fixed price. The mix of vessels mattered. Pricing changes mattered. Reservation and auction products became more valuable when slots were scarce. Other transit services still produced revenue. Costs were managed. A planner with cargo that needs a particular date may pay more for the confidence that the ship will not sit outside Panama waiting for an opening. When the available schedule shrinks, the remaining certainty becomes more valuable. The mix matters too. Losing several lower value movements does not have the same effect as losing the largest, highest paying passages. A smaller number of valuable transits, combined with reservation income and operational services, can keep revenue stronger than the traffic headlines suggests. That protects the financial statement for a year. It does not guarantee the route for the next decade, because the customer can learn to live without you. Suez exists. The Cape of Good Hope exists. Cargo can move through different ports. Schedules and supply chains can be rebuilt around another path. During the drought, some liquefied natural gas and bulk cargo traffic shifted toward alternatives. Once a customer changes a network, the water returning does not automatically move that network back. This is the cost hidden inside the strong profit number. Scarcity can make today's available slot more valuable, while making tomorrow's promise less believable. Then the rain returned. By fiscal year 2025, total transits recovered to more than 13,400. Revenue rose to about 5.7 billion balboas. Approximately 4 billion came from tolls, while other canal transit services added roughly 1.6 billion. Container ships and liquefied petroleum gas carriers helped drive the recovery. Liquefied natural gas traffic remained below expectations because the wider economics of that market had changed. The lake refilled faster than every customer relationship did. The financial scale was larger than the toll figure alone suggests. Total expenses were a little above 2 billion balaboas. Results from operations were approximately 3.68 billion, and audited profit for the year was about 4.9 billion, including net finance income. Those numbers need to stay separate. Revenue is what customers paid. Operating results are what remained after the cost of running the system. Final profit includes other financial effects, and the amount available for Panama is determined only after the authority funds the obligations that keep the canal useful. Approximately 2.96 billion balboas in transit fees, public service fees, and distributable earnings were designated for transfer to the national treasury in fiscal year 2025. That was not the entire top line handed to the government. It came after operations, investment, modernization, and required reserves. The canal therefore has to do two things at once. It has to produce national income now and protect the system capable of producing income later. A drought year can look financially resilient and still expose a future weakness. That is why Rio Indio did not disappear from the plan when the rain came back. The proposed reservoir and transfer system is estimated at around $1.6 billion. The planned lake would cover roughly 4,600 hectares. Depending on final design and operating assumptions, the project has been described as supporting roughly 12 to 15 additional daily transits. It is also intended to strengthen water reliability for more than 2 million people. From the planner's screen, that means more dates, more usable draft, and a lower chance that another dry period forces a diversion. From the authority's position, it means land, compensation, relocation, consultation, legal review, design, construction, and years of work before the first extra passage can be promised. From a community beside Rio Indio, it can mean losing a home, a farm, a road, river access, or the network of people that makes a place livable. The same proposed lake can therefore appear as three different objects. On a canal map, it is future operating capacity. On a national water plan, it is storage for more than 2 million people. On the ground, it is land where people already live. That is why the project cannot be explained honestly with one number. The estimate tells you what construction and community measures may cost. It does not tell you whether relocation is accepted, whether consultation is trusted, or whether the final design survives legal challenge. Residents have protested. Legal challenges and consultation disputes have followed. The project remains in study, design, consultation, and tender preparation. The cost is still an estimate. The timetable is not guaranteed. The number of people physically relocated and the number affected in other ways are not necessarily the same. That disagreement cannot be reduced to a simple choice between progress and obstruction. The authority is trying to protect public water and one of Panama's most important sources of national income. The affected communities are asking what compensation can actually replace land, work, movement, and an established life. Both sides are responding to something real, and both sides affect whether the project becomes economically useful. A reservoir can make sense on an engineering plan and still be delayed by unresolved land questions, weak consultation, legal uncertainty, rising cost, or opposition from the people expected to absorb its consequences. At the same time, delaying dependable water storage leaves the canal exposed to another dry cycle. The value of the shortcut travels around the world. Part of the cost of protecting it stays beside the river. So the Panama Canal works as an economic system when three promises hold together. The route has to save the customer enough time to justify the price. The authority has to convert that value into dependable dates, useful draft, and services that keep ships moving. And the water system has to support those passages alongside public supply and the people affected by the next expansion of storage. Break the first promise, and ships choose another route. Break the second, and customers stop trusting the schedule. Break the third, and the canal runs short of the capacity behind both of them. When the promises hold, the economics are extraordinary. A ship saves days. Panama captures part of that saving through tolls, reservations, and transit services. The authority funds the system, builds reserves, invests in its future, and transfers substantial earnings to the country. When they fail, the decline does not begin with a dramatic collapse. It begins with one missing date on a planner's screen, then a lower line painted against a ship's hull, then cargo that moves somewhere else. That is what the drought revealed. The famous image is a vessel passing between giant concrete walls. It looks like the ship is paying to use a canal, but the crossing is only the visible part of the transaction. The ship pays for a shortcut. Panama gets paid for making that shortcut dependable. The locks are the machine. The lake is the inventory. The promise is the business.